All right, the next section is us going from standard form into vertex form. So to go from standard form to vertex form, you are going to have to remember that this is where you complete the square. And 13, 14, and 15 are ready to complete the square, whereas the next four are not ready to complete the square. Okay, so to complete the square, what I do, for instance, I'll do b, is I will be grouping my b's together, and this is ready to complete the square because it's b squared. But I'm going to put this in parentheses, and this is where I add a blank, and then I subtract a blank. And I will get this number by taking -8, cutting it in half, which is -4, and squaring it, which don't use your calculator because it's 16, and your calculator might give you -16. And then from there, I will be adding this number to 16, and it's really worth 16. So when I go to the other blank, I'll be putting in 16. So from there, where I start is I take, the stuff on the outside, and you can think of this as -79 minus 16, or maybe you want to add the opposite, and go about it that way. But I'm typing in -79 plus -16, and on the outside I get a -95 or -95, and then with my parentheses squared, they use b, so I'll use b, and this number goes in there. And now this is my answer of vertex form. Okay, so that's how 13 and 15 work, but the rest are not ready to go because I don't have n squared. So if I do this problem, when I group my n's, I will have to factor the 6 out. And I'll factor it out of the 6n squared and the 12n, but there's my blank. So if I add a blank, I subtract a blank. And now I take 2, I cut it in half, that's 1, and 1 squared is 1. And now I wrote 1 down, but it's actually worth 6 because the 6 on the outside makes it 6n squared, 12n, and 6. So even though I wrote 1, I really added 6, which means on the outside I'll have to subtract 6. So from there, I always start by focusing on the things on the outside. Again, maybe you want to add the opposite, but -48 and -6 is -54 or -54. In the parentheses squared will be n because they use the letter n, and this one. And then hopefully you don't forget about that GCF of the 6 that you took out there, and now it is in vertex form. So that is how you do 17, 18, and 19. Now I didn't mention this in the last video, but you can always check to see if you're right. You just need to go to your y equals part of your calculator, type in the original problem, type in your answer, and you should have one parabola. Or if you look at the table, the y-coordinates between these two should be the same. So that is going from standard form into vertex form. And with that, I'm going to go into the final part of getting them from factored form or vertex form into standard form. So it just kind of depends what you have, but this is what I nicknamed as the neighbors meet the neighbors. So on 20, when I have, these 3 things to multiply, I have a 2, an x minus 4, an x minus 8. I always start with my parentheses, the neighbors meeting the neighbors. So first x is going to go over and meet the neighbors, and I get x squared minus 8x. And then -4 has to go and meet the neighbors, so I have a -4x joining the 8x. I'm stacking my like terms. And then this -4 and this -8 make an adding or positive 32. So anyway, when the neighbors meet the neighbors, I have x squared minus 12x plus 32. And now the final neighbor 2 is going to come in and meet everybody. So 2 is going to distribute to all 3, and I'll get 2x squared minus 24x plus 64. So for instance, let's take a look at 21. On 21, this is vertex form, and I need to remember that the squared actually means that there's 2 of these v plus 4s. There is still the plus 7, and so again, when I'm trying to decide what to do, I always have the neighbors meet the neighbors of parentheses. So v is going to go meet the neighbors first, and I get v squared and 4v. And then the 4 is going to go meet the neighbor, so I have another 4v and a 16. And so when I add these up, I get v squared plus 8v plus 16. And hopefully you don't forget about the 7 that was originally there, because then that can combine with the 16. And so my final answer is v squared plus 8v plus 23. All right, I'm going to do 2 more, and then I'm going to let you guys do these. So for instance, when you're looking at 22 and you're trying to decide what should multiply first, the safest way to do this is just have your parentheses meet your parentheses. So 7r is going to go meet first, and I get 7r squared. Remember, you're multiplying, and 35r. And now the minus 2 is going to go visit, so I get a negative 2r and a negative 10, or minus 10. So when I add these up, I get 7r squared plus 33r minus 10. And now the neighbor that hasn't met anybody yet, the negative, will come and meet everyone. So the negative will distribute to all 3, and my final answer will be negative 7r squared plus negative 33r plus 10. And the final problem that I'm going to do for you is number 26. And again, this is vertex form, and I'm going to remind you that p plus 3 squared means that there are 2 of these p plus 3's. And when I have all these that need to meet, start with the parentheses. So p goes to visit first. And I'll get p squared plus 3p. Now the other 3 is going to visit, and I get another 3p plus 9. Don't forget you're multiplying. So when I add them up, I get p squared plus 6p plus 9. And then the neighbor that hasn't met anyone yet is the 4. And the 4 will go meet everybody, and your final answer for this problem is 4p squared plus 24p plus 36. And again, if you want to see if your answer is right, type in the original problem, type in your answer. You can graph it and see that you have one picture, or you can go to your table and the y values for this should match the y values for that. And those are all the videos for finding equivalent forms, that part of the retake.